What were some of the breaking points you had to solve for? And what did you learn about the systems that scale people, not just processes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, helped grow businesses, help get a business acquired. I think the biggest thing I've seen, I've spent most of my career in marketing agencies, so they can grow really fast and a lot can happen at once. And it's a volatile environment that can happen. Across the five I've worked at in my career, what I've seen is the concept of heroic contributor versus operationalization. So most of small companies start with one or two heroic contributors. They're the people like strapping the thing to their back and dragging everyone with them. They know how to do everything. They are the people that are driving the work forward. But at some point, you cannot scale and be dependent on a few single points of failure. And oftentimes, we were just chatting about that person might be the CEO. And so you have to be kind of have an honest conversation there, but you have to figure out, how do I get the information from these heroic contributors and how do I operationalize that in a way that makes it scalable and sustainable and move beyond single points of failure people. A, stymie your growth, but B, you also create unfireable people. And with unfireable people, you're like, this person may not fit. Not everybody you start with is everyone you need to grow with, but you've made it so you are shackled to this person or these people because everything's in here for them and you've never gotten it out. And they are attached to this one client or service or person or manager. So a lot of the breaking points we've seen, especially small organizations, adding a couple of people changes the dynamic, right? Going from 1 to 5 or 5 to 15 or 20 to 30, those are big jumps for companies that are there. Going to 70 to 100, that's a large jump that requires some things. And if you don't start to right from the beginning have training and documenting and backups and understanding of how things are operating, you let that live inside a person, you make it so, I think Bethany was talking about, you make this cycle, right? Grow, 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 lose some stuff, grow, grow, lose some stuff. And you just get stuck here. You never get here. You're just stuck here forever. So that's the major breaking point that I've seen in growing some of these teams, is not getting out of that cycle of heroic contributor fast enough. And you have to fail 2 or 3 times until you figure out, oh, the real way to grow is to use these people in a strategic way, not fully depend on them to where if they leave or their knowledge goes out of date, that the rest of us, the impact of that is ginormous.
I love that you're saying this because I think that this still goes back to what you said a minute ago, which is the letting go, right? If the CEO can't let go or can't trust, then it's almost impossible to get real systems and processes in place because they want to feel valuable. And this again goes back to the mindset of, and I'm guilty of it myself in the past, so I can speak from experiences, is that, yeah, I'm the CEO. I'm the one who has to show how valuable I am because, I mean, I can't be just off at a spa while my team is running things. I've got to be in it, showing them how hard they want me out of their way, right? It was a lot of work mindset wise to realize that my team wants to be in their lane without me pulling them down, right? And they want me in my lane because that's where I shine and they don't want to be in my lane. And so I think letting go is the hardest thing to do, but it is the most critical. And it requires trust, not just of your team, but of yourself in determining where the team is headed, trusting yourself and kind of selling the team on the vision so that everybody kind of knows where we're heading and can really get bought in. And I think a lot of CEOs and founders skip that part because it feels soft. I'm daydreaming and I don't want to spend time to write out this vision of it. It seems a little fluffy, right? But I think it's critical because if the team's not bought in and excited, eventually they're going to burn out because they're just helping you do tasks. They're not helping drive this train towards some amazing destination that you haven't painted a picture.
Sama, your work focuses on leadership energy. What are the invisible drains that leaders often overlook, and how can they recover the momentum before burnout hits?
Good question, Harley. Well, I think those invisible trains, first of all, they are your own internal narratives, like your inner voices that keep telling you. In coaching language, we call them gremlins, and we all have those gremlins, right? So, yeah, and they could be anything. The job of those gremlins is to keep you safe. But the truth is, they are actually making you smaller and, they are throwing you in that unsafe zone. So one of those gremlin messages could be, I cannot stop. I have to go on, right? So I cannot take breaks. And if I am on vacation, I cannot disengage completely. I have to keep checking in, what my team is doing, what my organization is doing. While doing so, when you're off on the vacation and you're continuously checking in, seeing what your team is doing, same time you're giving a wrong message to your team that I don't trust you, right? So that is one thing, like those, and there's a very beautiful book. I have read it myself. We coaches have gremlins as well. Taming Your Gremlins by Rick Carson, where he beautifully explains how to overcome those gremlins. First of all, is very important, an essential component of emotional intelligence, that is self-awareness. first you have to be first and foremost aware about those gremlins. That's when you will embrace them, and that's when you will start working on them and overcoming them. So I would say that is first thing. And the second thing, what we are just discussing, letting go. So it's about creating boundaries. So when they have unclear boundaries, no clear roles and responsibilities, and you see the leader of the organization, the CEO, he would end up doing everything from administration, operations to building the strategy. So again, unclear boundaries, they'll slowly push them towards burnout. So again, you have to make sure your boundaries are clean and clear. Everybody's roles, responsibilities are clear so that everybody does not end up doing, everything. And I have worked with both type of leaders. I have worked with leaders who trust you, and I have seen the kind of environment in those companies, where the leaders primarily lead through transformational or through servant leadership, that is like charismatic, visionary. They focus on the well-being of the people. And I have seen leaders who primarily operate from transactional leadership style, give and take, reward and punishment, or maybe micromanage. And I have seen people going into high amount of burnouts in those cultures. So that is the primary difference. You really need to set your boundaries clean and listen to your inner voices. Sometimes taking a pause, just breathe, some grounding exercise. Those micro pauses is very important to really start from yourself and then spread it to your organization and the team.
I love that energy came up in this discussion because there are buckets that we all have, right? Time is a bucket and it's finite. Finances are a bucket and it's finite. But we often forget that energy is a bucket and it is also finite. So if you do not replenish yourself, if you let that bucket run down, you're not going to be able to show up for your team and or you demonstrate that burnout to your team, as you were saying. So I think we don't often think of that as something that's trackable or starting to think about like what tasks are high energy, what tasks are low energy. How do I sculpt my day around that? How do I, as I become a business, like build that into how I price what I do? How do I build that into how something is staffed? We think it's soft, to Bethany's point of some things that are soft, but it truly is a huge piece of something to consider is how much energy does it take to do this thing? Because it is a finite bucket and I only have so much to give. My team only has so much to give. So how do we optimize that in a way that gets what we need out the door, but doesn't burn the team out? So I love that energy came up because I think it's something that's being talked about more and more, but still often gets pushed aside for some of these more harder metrics or more trackable metrics like utilization or something like that. But it really does impact what the team is capable of doing and what they're willing to give when the times are asking for that.
Love that too. I think it came from Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, leverage other people's everything, right? I borrowed it from somewhere. I think it was Dan Martell. But we have our team, if it seems like someone's either not getting things done on time or they're dragging, or the first thing we do instead of saying, hey, we're going to punish you, to your point, Saima, have I done all I need to do to make sure you're operating in your lane? And so we have them do a time and energy audit, but it's both time and energy. What thing is taking up all of your time, but also what is taking up all the bandwidth in your brain for that creative energy? Because maybe you're not the person who should be doing it. Believe it or not, there's somebody in my email inbox that likes to check off that task. If I go in my inbox, I'm down half a day. Like I can't. Yeah. And so that takes up too much of my energy, and it ruins me from being creative. And I have team members who just like to dig in, and so they should be doing it and not me. And I think the time and energy audit is a really good tool because both things are important because both buckets can run dry.